Been trying this one for a few days and it hasn't come out right. So let's give it another go. Years ago, 35, 40 years ago when I was a student, my old professor back in the day in Cambridge anthropology was a philosopher called Gellner. And one of Gellner's points, one of the places that got him into anthropology, was a profoundly unsettling effect of reason. He would argue that since the Enlightenment, reason, and therefore scientific knowledge, is at odds with human experience and with society, and will be increasingly at odds. Just because the way reason is centered on the world, it's centered on an objective world, the world of things. It's not centered on the world of souls and spirits. And the two pull apart, so that things like morality and ethics become under question once you've got a post-Enlightenment world. He was interested that there was only one religion that didn't seem to have that tension, which was Islam, which was a religion of the book and was much better at reconciling its vision of the world within reason. Well, that was then and this is now. But one of the things I live with is actually how right Gellner was about that basic tension, which he linked back to Kant, between reason and our experience of the world. Now, most of the time, we're a little bit removed from it. We tend to think of the mechanical world, the world reason gives us, the world of cars and AI and computers, in terms of what we can use it for. And only if you're trying to design it do you actually understand how difficult it is to think as designing it demands you to think, how you have to really squeeze and force your mind to decenter it from you and to center it on the object you are thinking about. It's never, ever, ever easy. It's why experts are experts. It's because you become used to understanding something from a position that is not human. Okay? Now, pretty well most of the time, we're fairly relaxed about this, surprisingly relaxed. We ought to be more worried, but we're not, because we've got a society that's very adept at selling it to us. I suppose that's kind of what capitalism does. By being a system beyond any single human, it gets us used to the idea that the knowledge it's selling is nothing about humans. But there are times when you really come up against it. And when you can really come up against it, it creates problems. Let me explain this carefully. And I'm not saying anything negative here, but one of the big times for me that you come up against it is the entire issue of doctors. We've all had the experience. You go into a doctor, the doctor seems to listen to you for about, I think the consultant usually takes 11 seconds to make a judgment. They prescribe you a pill and off you pop. Okay? Now, this is a deeply unsatisfying experience. But it is, of course, medically correct in that if you are worrying about the body, you don't care about what people say. You care about that bit you're listening for, that bit you know you can treat, that bit you've got the tablet for. That's just the world of reason. It's the world of bodies and drugs and not humans. In some ways, it's kind of useful because it marginalises any sickness to the edge. And always the danger with sickness is it can invade your personality. You always have to watch that. Okay? But it is, of course, a deeply unsatisfactory experience for those people who are worried or anxious. And Gellner is very aware of that. He says part of the problem with reason is that it opens up the way to endless dissatisfaction. And of course, one of the ways we express that dissatisfaction these days is by mistrusting the experts. Maybe they're wrong and we're right. Maybe reason has got it wrong and society has got it right. In a very deep way, of course, that is, of course, true. Society is right. We live in a human world. And the fact that our reason doesn't is the anomaly. That gap, then, creates endless opportunities for political opportunity. Conspiracy theories, if you like, where as the reason isn't reconcilable to the world, people can rail against it, call it a conspiracy, call it out as another, call it out as something beyond, and assume somebody must be getting something from it. Because if you build a society for that reason that isn't human to exist, it's either raging capitalism, which is probably what we've got, or a sinister cabal who is something other than human, who is designing all these things that are certainly other than human. You get the point? The reason itself is beyond our humanity. That is a real problem if you try to include it within humanity. This is an uncomfortable position. Gellner is the master of explaining why it must be uncomfortable. And so, he died in 1995. He remains, for me, still so worth reading and thinking about when you're trying to work out why the world seems so barking mad.